go. Train time. Where go?
Gentlemen, this school is about combat. There are no points for second place.
This is the Never Down, Never Out podcast with your host, T.R. Matson.
Welcome back. Never Down, Never Out. T.R. Matson here as always, every morning. Episode 99. 99 days in a row we've been together. Hopefully at this point the video clarity is good. Hopefully at this point the audio clarity is fine. Hopefully I've fixed all those glitches. I always look over at the mic just to make sure. A little nervous. Make sure little kids didn't push buttons. Hopefully we're getting something out of this. Hopefully this isn't just me talking at a screen. Hopefully it's helping. That's what I'm thinking. Tomorrow's episode 100. Wow. Thank you all. I appreciate that. Couldn't have done it without you. If nobody watched, if nobody commented, listened, I probably would not still be doing this. I probably would be recording them for my kids and just leaving them on my computer. So thank you. What are we talking about today? Why tough times reveal character. Well, I've often said that I don't really care how a man or a woman acts when things are good. Because it's when things are bad that it shows their true character. When things are going bad for you, how you respond to it is what really speaks volumes to who you are. An example is, my mom finding out about cancer and getting into a fight mode instead of giving up. It tells me everything I need to know about my mom. And I knew it. I wasn't surprised. I mean, she's a tough lady. So that tells me everything. But let me give you an example. So when I was in Meridian, ultimately in charge of all the training for carrier qualifications, which at the time was a huge deal in naval aviation, right? That was the culmination of your flight training. And most, if not almost all of the students would finish with going to the boat and then they'd get their wings. And I know the training has changed a bit based on technology, but that's, it was still a pretty big deal back then. And I wouldn't go as far as to say that it was common for students to fail the first time they went to the boat, but it happened. And I remember, it was told to me when I went through training by my LSO, who was fantastic, that, we never really know how we're going to react as pilots when we see the monster for the first time. When you're overhead the ship in a formation with other students and an instructor leading you, and you look down and you see what that aircraft carrier looks like from, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 foot up in the sky. We don't know, and when I became the wing LSO, one of the places that I really loved doing carrier qualification detachments was Key West. And the reason is not for what everybody thinks, although I do love going to Key West. It was because it was such a short flight from the base to where the ship was that the students didn't really have much time to think about it. They took off, they joined up, and they were overhead the ship, and it was time to go. The worst was Jacksonville, because when we went to Jacksonville, I loved going to Jacksonville. That's where I did my initial qualification. I'll never forget it. But the worst was, depending on where the ship was, it could be a little bit of a flight. So you had a lot of time to think about it. That's why Key West was great. But, the team LSOs I worked with between VT7 and VT9 were fantastic, and they put in the hard work and made my job easy. But ultimately, if a student didn't pass the boat, I was part of that decision, and that's a tough thing, because you're at the end of your time. You're hoping that you're going to finish up and get your wings. You probably already have your family having plans to come to your winging and all that. There's a lot of pressure. And I remember vividly one class where 2 students failed, one from each squadron. And how they handled the news told me everything about the types of people they were, how they were raised, and ultimately whether they were going to be successful or not. And I could say in hindsight, looking back at it, the one that I thought was going to be successful was, and the one that I thought wasn't. So I was part of the meeting, and I had to go down and talk to the student who failed. And the first one, sat him down, explained to him, the LSOs would print out your grades and show you trends that you had and all this. And he wasn't a bad pilot at all. He just was making the same mistake over and over again, and it wasn't consistent, and he couldn't pass. It was just the way it was. And he listened. And, for people that don't understand the idea of a landing signal officer, and, I joke, we were told we were called angels in white, because the pilots loved us when they really needed us. There were some other less affectionate nicknames for LSOs. But being an LSO is very much an art form. It's not a science. I mean, at 3/4 of a mile behind the ship, it's all visual back then. Again, things have changed, but back then. And it's an art form. And as an LSO, you get an eye for it. And you can look at an aircraft, because you've done it so many times, and tell whether they're high on glide slope or low on glide slope or lined up left, lined up right, power state. I mean, when I was doing it in the fleet regularly, you get good at it. You could almost control that airplane with your voice, which is pretty cool. But it's an art form. So this first student, we gave him his debrief, and he looked at all of us and he said, "Thank you. If given the opportunity, I will be better next time." And I thought that was very mature for somebody who likely had plans for his parents to come and put wings on his chest within a couple weeks. And it really struck me as a maturity that I'm not sure I would have had at his age or his point in training. Well, we finished that meeting, and then I meet up with the other LSOs, and I go down to the other squadron and have another student. Now, this student was very different. The trend analysis was very... there was really no trend. They just seemed like they weren't getting it at all. There was no consistency to the landings. They were kind of all over the place. So sit down with his LSOs and him, and we talk about everything, and we explain the situation and all that. And it's not a guarantee that you're going to go again to the boat. Like, it's got to go through the leadership channels and all that. And we explain that. And instead of owning it at a low moment, when we stopped explaining it, this student looked at me and he goes, "Is there any chance that you're just seeing it wrong?" Now, none of us are perfect. But when we're watching these landings, it's not one LSO out there. There's a group of us. So if one person's eyeball is off a little bit, the rest can calibrate it. But the thing that spoke to me more about that student's character was, unlike the previous student who said, "Thank you, sir, I will be better," this guy was looking for an excuse. Because it couldn't possibly be him. It had to be something else. At his low moment of seeing potentially the end of his career in the Navy, his answer wasn't, "If given a chance, I'll do better." His answer was, "It's your fault." And I think that proves in one day, I mean, we're talking within an hour of each other, the difference in people's character. I can tell you the first student went on, did the workups again and passed and went on to be a very successful naval aviator. And I can tell you the other student never got their wings and left the Navy before finishing flight school. So I'm here to tell you that you're going to be knocked down. We know that. We've established that. You're going to come across adversity in your life. How you handle that adversity is going to speak far greater for who you are as a human being than anything else. So I ask you today, you've gone through things so far. Think about the times that you went through and handled it well. And more importantly, think about the times that you went through bad things and didn't handle it well. And what would you change? Because that's where growth comes from. And if we can look back at how we did things, maybe not the way we would have liked to, then we're prepared the next time for when something happens. And as I always say, the goal is to not be perfect, because none of us are ever going to be perfect. But if I could be a little better today than I was yesterday, and a little better tomorrow than I am today, I'm at least growing in the right direction. Well, that's what I got, and I appreciate you tuning in for 99 episodes. I'm not going to build up expectations that anything special is going to come with episode 100, but who knows? Thanks for all the support, and as always, we'll talk tomorrow.
T.R. Matson is a 20-year Navy career combat veteran who flew the E-2C Hawkeye and F/A-18C Hornet. He's the author of Treason Flight and Vengeance Flight. You can reach him at trmatson or trmatson.com. Thanks for listening to the Never Down, Never Out podcast.